Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome this today to Sunday Church School. I am Deacon Fred Fletcher, and we're coming to you from the St. Matthew's Church, located SMC, as you see right here on my right and to my left. St. Matthew Church, Huntsville, Alabama, located at 3200 Sparkman Drive. We're just proud and thankful to be here today on this beautiful Sunday morning, on Sunday, December the 8th. It's already the second Sunday in December already. Year of our Lord 2024. This year is almost over, and where did it go? But we're here for it all. So we're just thankful for this opportunity to come before you and share. Here at St. Matthew, our pastor is the illustrious Robert Rogers Jr., and we welcome you to another wonderful Sunday Church School study today. We want to go ahead and get started. We want to continue to pray for those in our church ministry, continue to pray for our own Deacon Brooks, our own Deacon Pitts, our own Mother Turner, Mother Lula Mae Turner. We're still praying for the Porter family, still praying for the Burnett family, still praying for little Bailey Faye Campbell, and praying for so many others. Let's continue to pray. It is our Christian duty. This morning's lesson, we're still in the lesson quarter. A king forever, forever. That's our quarterly theme. A king forever and ever. Let me back this up just a little bit. Get out of my face. Okay. All right. And of course, our Unit 1 theme, Jesus, the heir of David, and it encompasses lessons 1 through 5, of which this is lesson 2. And our lesson title is God's Promise. God's Promise, and it's coming to us from 2 Samuel, the 7th chapter, verses 4 through 17. Our devotional reading is Isaiah 9, 1 through 7, and our background scripture is 2 Samuel 7, 1 through 17. Our lesson aims, if I can find them, this thing's way big. Our lesson aims, number 1, summarize David's intent and God's response. 2, explain the different senses of the use of the word house. And 3, which is a take-home assignment, write a prayer for obedience to God even when his plans differ from human plans. Amen. Our key verse today: thine house and thine kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. 2 Samuel 7 and 16. All right. Our home daily Bible readings, which is the lessons and scriptures that accompany our Sunday school lessons that you read, to sort of give you some sort of some historical and inspirational significance for our lesson. Monday, December the 2nd, the Lord looks on the heart. 1 Samuel 16, verses 1 through 13. Tuesday, December the 3rd. A shepherd for God's people, 2 Samuel 5, verses 1 through 10. Wednesday, December the 4th, Christ's unending reign, Luke 1, 26 through 38. Thursday, December 5th, God defends the anointed, Psalms 2. Friday, December the 6th, endless peace for David's throne, Isaiah 9, 1 through 7. Saturday, December the 7th, the Son of David, Romans 1, 1 through 7. And Sunday, December the 8th, an everlasting kingdom, 2 Samuel 7, verses 4 through 17. Our introduction today, a temporary dwelling. Put this down just a little bit. 12 years ago, my wife and I moved to a remote town in western Alaska. The area where we spent the first decade of our Alaskan journey was accessible only by boat or by plane. Besides our town, 89 smaller villages are located in western Alaska, off the road system. Many of these communities are near rivers, providing more accessible summer transportation and an abundant supply of salmon. One distinctive aspect of life in this region is that the homes are constructed on what they call permafrost, which is a permanent layer of soil, a frozen layer of soil. Due to the thawing permafrost and harsh weather conditions, these homes require more upkeep than those built in the contiguous United States. In Newtok, a small Alaskan village, erosion and deterioration became so severe that the entire community had to be relocated to a higher ground, away from the river. Many villagers witnessed the river slowly eat away at their homes until it finally engulfed the entire structure. The homes, the homes we construct are temporary. In King David's mind, the time for the Lord to live in a tent, the tabernacle, was officially over. 2 Samuel 7 verses 1 through 2, which is before our lesson. What follows is the king's decision would be much different than he anticipated. Amen. Amen. A temporary dwelling. All right. In our lesson context, just to give you that some context of what's going on. In our lesson today, we've been dealing with we talked about Ruth and Naomi and Boaz on last week, and we know that Ruth was like the great grandmother of David, because she and Boaz begat Obed, and then Obed was the father of Jesse, and of course Jesse was the father of David. All right, so today we're talking about King David. So now we're going to talk about today a desire to do something that was on the surface, something that needed in his mind to be done, but many times we do things and we have these grand plans and these grand things that we want to do, but it ain't in God's plan. And it would behoove us to consult the Lord in all that we do, so that we know where we fit in his plan. So today's lesson, we find David, and we know if you go look at the history, you go into 1 Samuel, you'll see the situation where the Lord had took his countenance away from Saul because Saul had become disobedient, and the Lord took his spirit away from him. And the Lord told Samuel, said, "Look, I done found me another king. Quit belly aching over Saul, seeing I done rejected him. Go down to the house of Jesse, and I'm going to anoint me a new king." And Samuel said, well, Lord, if Saul see me and want to think that I'm doing this, he will kill me. He said, "Well, all right, then we'll make this a sacrifice. You take you a heifer and go down there and you sacrifice and invite Jesse to the sacrifice. If King Saul need to know what you're doing." So they went down there, and we know the story. He brought the oil and all of the stuff, and he went out to Jesse's house, and he brought all of his 7 sons out before. Brought Abinadab and Samuel. Brought all them dudes out in front of him. And none of the oil ran. He ran all the other sons until he said, "Well, is that all you got? We ain't gonna sit down until you bring him." So I got one more. But he just a little fella. He just out in the back. Surely you want one of these that are commanders and people men that are in the war, that fight and are in the army and of good stature. You want one of them. He said, "No, go bring the little fella. We ain't gonna sit down." So they brought David out, and with the horn, he raised it up above David, and the oil ran all down his face and all down his clothes, all down his robe, all down on the floor. And we speculating here. And so we knew that was the one the Lord made use of. And if you read that, he said the Lord looks on the inward parts, not on the outward. That's what one of our home daily Bible readings, I think it's the Mondays, talked about. The Lord looks on the inside, not the outside. All right. So we know from that point on, as I said, David was a man after God's own heart. He was a young boy. He was a shepherd boy. He also played the harp, you know, with great passion and great proficiency. So when Saul and we get into something else, Saul was distressed because the Lord took his spirit away from him, and an evil spirit took his place. And I know that's something that I was discussing, and I was looking at as I was researching this lesson. Is that we want the Lord to occupy our mind and our spirit, because when the Lord take His spirit away from us, our spirit and our reservoir gets filled by other things. That's why it's always good to keep ourselves busy, working for the Lord and through His will and His way. Because once we stop doing that stuff or take our attention away from Him, other things start to fill our minds, start to fill our hearts, start to fill our ambitions, right? So the Lord took His spirit and His mercy away from Saul, and an evil spirit took its place. And so now he was distressed by that. And so he called for David to come and soothe him. He was the newly anointed king. He went to go soothe the former king. So by the time our lesson picks up, David had become king. You can look at the 2 Samuel, the 5th chapter, and it talks about how he became the king of 2 Samuel, the 5th chapter. And it talks about when he came and all of Israel came together and and recognized him as king. Now, in the process of doing this, the king, even though he was the king of united Israel, Israel was not united. He united it. Okay, because Jerusalem was inhabited by the Jebusites, and he overthrew them and made Jerusalem the capital, and then he overthrew the Philistines. And when they had many fights with the Philistines, and the Ark of the Covenant got taken, and so he overthrew the Philistines, got the Ark of the Covenant back. And so when he had subdued all of those subjects, he sat down and he reflected upon what he had done, and everything was settled. Israel was a united country now under him. Okay. And now he began to look around. All right. And he made a determination of what he was going to do. And what I want to do is we get into our lesson. I want you to think about a time when you thought about something you wanted to do, and it seemed noble. It seemed with good intent, but we did not consult the Lord on it. And many times the Lord has to let us know that that's not my plan. So we're going to look at that today. All right. Our lesson today comes from the 7th chapter of 2 Samuel. And we're going to look at our first outline, history lessons. It's going to be verses 4 through 9. And I'm gonna pull that up over here. But yeah, we always have an idea of what we want to do, but the Lord's plans always reign supreme. All right. So our first outline is going to be history lessons, and that's verses 4 through 9. So let's go ahead and read those, beginning at verse 4. And it came to pass that night, as the word of the Lord came unto Nathan, saying, Go and tell my servant David, thus saith the Lord, shalt thou build me a house for me to dwell in, whereas I have not dwelt in any house since the time I have brought the children of Israel up out of Egypt, even to this day, but have walked in a tent and in a tabernacle. Verse 7, in all places wherein I have walked, all of the children of Israel spake I a word with any of the tribes of Israel, where I commanded to feed my people Israel, saying, why build ye not me a house of cedar? Verse 8, now therefore so shalt thou say unto my servant David, thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be a ruler over my people, over Israel, and I was with thee. whithersoever thou wentest, and I have cut off all thine enemies out of thy sight. And I have made thee a great name like unto the name of the great men that are in the earth. All right, we'll stop right there. That's 4 through 9. That's a history lesson. All right. Now, the first part of our lesson, which I mistakenly omitted, when David had overthrown all of this stuff and he had warred with the Philistines, with the Jebusites, with all of these different nations to unify Israel, to get the Ark of the Covenant back. We know the Ark of a Covenant was in like a chest, and it was layered with gold, and it had the 10 Commandments inside of it with cherubims. And it was housed in what was called a tent or a tabernacle, which was 4 tent poles, and the tent was made out of like animal skins, and it was made to be mobile because the people had not been settled yet. They were people that could move on a dime. If they needed to go, they moved. But in this season, the Lord was settling them. See, sometimes the Lord has to settle you. You know, you've done all your traveling, you to move from place to place, but you ain't set up roots. You haven't set up anything. So you gotta, at some point in your life, you've done running, and the Lord wants to set a foundation for you. So at this point in time, David sat down. All his enemies were defeated, and all this stuff was done. He sat down. He looked around, and this is something I want everybody to think about, because we think this same thing. Well, I would think most of you would. I think something would be wrong with you if you didn't. But here's the thing. He sat down, and he looked around. He was in his palace, and he looked at how grandeur his palace was, with the columns and the cedar wood that they hauled in from King Hiram of Tyre. You can find that in the First Samuel, Second Samuel, the 5th chapter. It tells you, they had timbers from his forest brought in. They had barter systems then. One country, just like we do now, one country produces one thing, another country produces another thing, and they make exchange. If they needed wood, they would contact Tyre, and the king would cut wood down and send it. They process it, and they would build for them. That was something they didn't have in Jerusalem or whatever. So they would contact people that had those things. They would make trades. And so he contacted this king, and they had this magnificent wood to build the columns and the floors and the foundations and stuff. And they had the gold and these other things to build the different parts. So David was sitting down, and he was looking at all this grandeur all around him. All this great stuff that was the Lord had allowed him to accomplish, allowed him to accumulate over his lifetime, right? And he thought about where the Ark of the Covenant sat. And he's like, now the Ark of the Lord sits in a tent outside in the elements, while I sit in here. I'm gonna use our own terminology, in the air conditioning, or in the summertime, in the wintertime, in this nice heat. But the Lord's representation is outside in the elements, in a tent, and he started to think about that. And it didn't seem right to him. Now, what I want y'all to think about, and I do not fault David for wanting to do for the Lord, for looking at where the Lord's stuff is and think like, dang, look at how my stuff is, and look at how his stuff is, the stuff that's representation of his, and think that something is wrong. A gentleman, Pastor J.W. Smith, he pastors a church in Fraser. It's a community in Memphis, Tennessee. He was talking about that. He said, now, I don't fault David for wanting to do well for the Lord. He said, look, I got all this grandeur. He said, you look at today, you got people, you look in the parking lot of the churches, you see all kind of cars. You see $100,000 cars. And then you see people that come inside the church got, $500 suits, $300-400 dresses. They're wearing red bottoms. And anybody that know that, women that wear red bottoms, them $1,000 shoes, right? You got all this stuff on, and then they said, but the church of God is dilapidated. The walls are rickety. The floor is not even, and you don't have no, like, you all right with that. You go in and out with your fine suits, your fine clothes, your $100 colognes, and all this good stuff, and you put $5 in the collection plate. Something is off if you okay with that. So I'm not mad at David for like, man, look at how well the Lord done provided for me. Look at how I'm living. Look at what I have. Look at these vaulted ceilings and chandeliers and stuff that I'm looking at every day. And the Lord stuff is outside in the rain, outside in the wind, outside in the heat. And he thought there's something's wrong with that picture. And I don't fault him for that. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So he talked to Nathan. Nathan was the prophet. So, they had a two-party system, if you will. You had political and you had religious. David represented the political because he was the king. And many times in doing what he wanted to do, he would call his religious advisor, which in this case would be the prophet Nathan. And he would mull stuff over. So, I'm thinking about building the Lord this magnificent structure. It's not right that the Ark of the Covenant is outdoors and it can be taken by anybody that seeks to take it, because it was in the possession of the Philistines at one point. They had to war and get that thing back from them. If it was in a house like what I live in, it could be protected. It would be, you would have pride when you see it. It's all, it's not right that it sits outdoors. I'm going to build him a house. And Nathan was like, well, David, that's a very noble gesture. Do what is in your heart to do, and the Lord be with you. But see, the problem with that is they had good intentions. They had grand ambitions. But they hadn't asked the Lord about nothing. So Nathan went home. And that night, Nathan got a vision from the Lord. Now, and many times when David's successor, Solomon, which we kind of getting ahead of ourselves, the Lord would talk directly to him. But in this case, the Lord was talking to David, but through Nathan. And that's a question. So let's look at the first verse. And it says here, now I'm just giving you what David had proposed in his heart and his mind to do, to build the Lord this great facility, okay? Because he thought it was wrong that he lived in this great grandeur and the Lord was outdoors. And as people of God, you ought to feel some kind of way if the Lord done blessed you with a $200,000-$300,000 house, and you got $40,000-$50,000 car, and you okay with the roof leaking at the church. You shouldn't be okay with that. You shouldn't be okay with the plumbing not working. You shouldn't be okay with the paint peeling at the church. You shouldn't be okay with that. All right. But in fixing that or doing something about that, consult the Lord so he can direct you as how you should do it, when you should do it, and how you should do it. Right. So they didn't do any of those things. It just seemed the right thing to do. So the Lord talked to Nathan. He said, no, this is what I want you to do. Verse 4 says, and it came to pass that night that the word of the Lord came unto Nathan. It didn't come to David, it came to Nathan. He was using Nathan as a proxy. He was going to go through Nathan to talk to David. Okay? And he says, and he asked a question. He asked a question. He says, now, God chose to speak to David indirectly through Nathan the prophet, as opposed to speaking to him directly. Now, there was a question asked in our lesson study today. Why do you think that is? Because Lord do what he wants, how he want to do it. But why did he choose this particular thing to talk to another person, to David, rather than just going right to David? Now, my thing is, I think he wanted to kill two birds with one stone. What do you mean? What do you mean, teacher? Well, because both of them was erred. Both of them erred. Now, David thought what he thought because he, look, hey, I'm the king, and I have a mind to do some good things, and I'm gonna talk to the prophet about it. And the prophet just gave him his rubber stamp and moved on. Okay, go do it. Now, what he should have said, that's very good. Let's go pray about that. Let's go offer a sacrifice. Let's go pray about it and see and ask for direction to see how the Lord wants us to do it. But that ain't what happened. He just said, go ahead and do it, and the Lord will be with you. Now, how you know what the Lord gonna be with? You lying on the Lord. You don't know who the Lord gonna be with. You guessing. You would say, well, the Lord wouldn't be against building a house for himself, right? So yeah, the Lord will be with you. But he hadn't talked to the Lord. So the Lord came to Nathan and instead of David to basically to correct both of them. You know, so he killing two birds with one stone. So I'm gonna come to Nathan and let him know you wrong for okaying this, and I want you to let David know that he was wrong, that you didn't consult me. I got a better plan. So sometimes you just might want to fix a door at the church, but the Lord got grander plans to fix the entire thing and do something for the entire community. You just want to fix a door. See, he just trying to get a house built. The Lord trying to establish a legacy. Sometimes your plans be like this, and the Lord's plans be like this. And you run with your plans, and it's just a pebble on the ocean compared to what the Lord got planned. And you just want to know what's my part in this grand plan, and just let me play my part. So he came and he asked a question. And many times the Lord asked Nathan, it's a rhetorical question. We didn't have literature before. Sometimes these writers and poets would ask what they call a rhetorical question. It's a question that is supposed to make you ponder. You're not supposed to yell out the answer. I know it. No, it's not supposed to be that kind of thing. You're supposed to ponder this. And you're not supposed to answer. It's supposed to be something introspective. So he asked the question. Let's look at what he asked. Now he says here in verse 4, as soon as I find it, okay, that's 6. Verse 4, and it came to pass that night, the word of the Lord came unto Nathan, saying, go and tell my servant David. Okay. Thus said the Lord. And he asked this question, shalt thou build me a house for me to dwell in? Well, sure, yes. No, be quiet. I'm not finished asking you the question yet. Okay. In that other way, he's saying, should you build me a house? And of course, he was like, well, why shouldn't I? But he's not finished. And then he goes on to explain what the Lord is seeing. And he goes on in verse 6 and says, whereas I have not dwelt in any house since the time that I brought thee out of the land of Egypt. What you got to remember is the Lord was in the process of settling his people. Okay. Remember, when they came out of Egypt, they really weren't a people. They were nomads. And actually, the time in Egypt kind of allowed them to collect themselves while they were in Egypt. And when they got dispelled out of Egypt, and they were in the wilderness, you sort of separated the good ones from the bad ones, the rebellious ones from the righteous ones, and all that kind of stuff. And then only a scant few of them went over into the promised land, right? But that 40 years in the wilderness kind of, the Lord was picking and choosing. The Lord was, we would have thought all, however many 100,000 of them, million or whatever of them, should have went into the promised land. Like, no, all y'all can't go. So while they was outside, on the other side of the Red Sea, and were, in the wilderness, the Lord, picked and chose, and some of them got, sidetracked, and the Lord picked a handful to go into the promised land. And that's where he set up his people. They had a land of their own. They had inhabitants in it. They had to destroy those inhabitants. That's what David's job was when he became king after Saul. Go through and these little patches here, go over there, some Jebusites over there, go wipe them out. There's some Jebusites over here in Jerusalem, go wipe them out. Some Philistines over there, go wipe them out. There's some Canaanites over there, go wipe them out and settle this land for your own, because they didn't even have a land. Okay. So the Lord is giving them a history lesson. Says, all this time, since I brought thee out of Egypt, I ain't had we were nomads. We ain't had, what was you going to build me permanent? I ain't had no place to sit down and as if the Lord needs to sit down. The Lord's a spirit. He don't have the same type of legs and arms that we do, but he can still move things. He can still go places without using the physical legs and the physical arms that we have, right? Because he's a spirit, right? So many times we limit God to our, finite abilities. Oh, he needs somewhere to sit down. He needs to walk here. He needs to rest here. Lord don't need none of that stuff, right? So he says here, at any time I have not dwelt in any house since that time I brought thee out of Egypt. He's just giving them what you would call perspective on this whole thing. All right. Since I brought thee out of Egypt, I've not had a place to sit down, but have walked in a tent. Walk. He even saying I walk, but then basically he just his presence. Because the Lord is wherever he is. He don't have to walk nowhere to be nowhere. Have mercy, Lord. He can be wherever he want to be without having to walk. Okay. But he says, I have walked in a tent and in a tabernacle. Okay. Verse 7, in all the places where I have walked, in all the children of Israel, have I spake a word with any of the tribes of Israel, where I commanded thee to feed my people Israel, saying, why not ye build me a house of cedar? What he's saying is that y'all think that I ain't got sense enough to ask for what I want? That I'm some sort of damsel in distress and help me. I need help here. He's like, no, at any time, you don't think if I needed or desired something, I wouldn't have asked y'all for that? Okay. No time did I ask did I ask Samuel? I would have told Samuel. That was the prophet that came before Nathan. I would have asked him, hey, talk to Saul, talk to David, talk to, this is what I want done. I want this built. And he said, no, I could have had that built, but it ain't time. See, many times you may want something and it might be the right thing, but it ain't the right time. Ain't the right context. Certain things ain't passed through the river yet, So he asked that question. He said, at any time that I ever asked for that? And of course, that's a question. That's a rhetorical question. They like, well, I'm thinking about it. No, you ain't have. But you thought it was. But you thought. I know you thought I was in distress. You thought I was tired and needed to sit down. You thought I was in the elements and getting rained on, and you want to be protected. I get it. But if I'd have wanted that or desired that at this point in time for this particular purpose, the Lord got plenty of sense to ask for it. And he had not done that. So he's asking him this question. Let's move it on. So verse 8, he said, have I asked you to build me a house of cedar? And cedar meaning that fine wood that they used to use back then. That was the best wood. Today, not so much. Today, we use like oak. It's more of a better wood than cedar, I guess. Oak is supposed to be like solid wood or whatever. But back in those days, cedar was the flavor of the day, So have I asked you to build me a house of cedar? He said, no. And then, of course, now verse 9, we get into a latter part of this outline where he's giving David a history lesson. Okay, giving David a history lesson. So let's look at that here, because we're looking at a history lesson verses 4 through 7. We just chronicled Israel's past. Okay, now we're going to talk about verse 8, David's past. Okay, so sometimes the Lord got to let you know where you at. Now David was looking at it from his past as well. He's like, look at how I'm living. Look at where I come from, and I got these high vaulted ceilings. I can sit here and ask for what I want, and a servant to come bring it to me. I mean, about a month or two later, he gonna see a woman on the rooftop bathing. He gonna have his servant to go bring her to me. That's the kind of reach and kind of power he has. Okay, where did he come from? So the Lord is reminding him where he came from. He said, verse 8 here. And you can go find this in 1 Samuel, chapter 16. It's when David was found by Samuel, what he was doing at the time. And this just talks about it. Verse 9, and the Lord tells him, as soon as I find it here. Okay, here we go. Verse 9. I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be a ruler over my people. Okay, over Israel. Verse 9. And I was with thee whithersoever thou wentest, and have cut off all thy enemies out of thy sight, and have made thee a great name like no other name, until all the name of the great men that are in the earth. Okay. So he's letting David know, like, no, I know you done some great things. All right, but look where I done brought you from. And David's thinking the same thing. He's thinking, look, he done took this little shepherd boy from here, and look at what I have. And it would be remiss for me to enjoy this great stuff and look outside and see the Lord's stuff outside in the rain. I get it. He said, but when the time comes, that's going to be taken care of. Okay. And so he says, now I got greater plans for you. Anytime in this thing, I could have told you to do that, or anybody to do that. It wasn't the time to do that. And so now he's telling him now, moreover, verse 10, I will build and appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and I will move no more, neither more shall the children of wickedness afflict them anymore. See, all these nations around them were idol worshipers, and David, his job was to destroy those folks. And there's a theme here. There's a theme here, and we get ready to close because it's 9:52. There's a theme here because David was a warrior. Okay. The Lord used him for a specific time, for a specific place, for a specific purpose. He was to go through. Actually, Saul was the one to do it, but Saul was trying to do other things. Saul was trying to keep stuff. He was trying to keep the wicked stuff, the stuff that was sacrificed to idols, the heifers and the bulls and the stuff that was sacrificed to idols and to devil worship and all these kind of. He was trying to keep them oxes and bullocks. Man, ain't nothing wrong with these bulls. I'm gonna keep them, and I'm gonna tell the Lord I destroyed them. No, the Lord said, utterly destroy all of it. See, our problem in our society is we like to live next door to wickedness. We don't want to. We want to let that live like next door to us, and they be wondering why our stuff be upside down. I'm just saying what I'm saying, but we like to live next door to wickedness. We're in an allowance, type of society now where we'll just let's let everybody do their thing. Well, when you let that be, then you be wondering, why my kids acting this way? Why are they thinking these sorts of things? Yeah, because you got to, So that's why the Lord wanted that stuff destroyed from around them, because they influence you. Y'all will get that at some point in your life. Y'all will get that. Maybe not. But anyway, he says, now, I want to give them a place of my own, of their own. Verse 11. So let's go ahead and read 11 through 17. And because we read through 9, let's read verse 10 through, and we're going to close. Beginning at verse 10. If I can find it. Yeah, verse 10. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them anymore. As before time, verse 11. And as since that time, the time I have commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused thee to rest from all thine enemies. Also the Lord telleth thee that he that maketh me a house, okay, he will maketh me a house. And when thy days be fulfilled, verse 12, when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. Verse 13, he shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever and ever. Verse 14, and I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him in the rod of men and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. 16, and thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. And 17, and the last, according to these words and according to all this vision, so that Nathan speak this unto David. All right, we'll stop right there, and we're gonna close out on that. So what the Lord is telling him is that, look, you're gonna have somebody come out. You trying to do it all in this era. People don't realize there's errors that's coming after you. And sometimes people don't understand that sometimes things go on in the era after you dead and gone. And many times people don't conceptualize that. Some point in time, somebody else gonna be teaching this class. It ain't gonna be me. It's gonna be other people sitting in the Sunday school class. It won't be you. Okay? It's another era. And many times we feel like our era is unlit, is undying. It's gonna go. No, our era got a beginning and an end. Okay? And that's what he had to let David know. He said, no, I needed you for this particular period, for this particular thing. Now, one coming after you, I'm gonna endow him with all these things. He's gonna build my name, but it's gonna come from you. Now he don't even know this whole incident with Bathsheba. The Lord already constructed that thing, because that's where it's gonna come through. He don't commit that act with Bathsheba, that this whole thing don't happen, because that's the woman he's gonna have this king with. All right. He don't know that at the time. He probably don't even know who Bathsheba is at this point. Many times the Lord got a plan for you, got a legacy for you, and there's people walking around that you don't even know that he gonna match you up with for some reason, to build something, to be married to go into contract with, that's gonna push your legacy way out into the future that you ain't even met yet. But you got to understand your part. And that's what he was trying to tell him. He said, look, your successor, he going to build my kingdom, because you a man of war. Because that's not covered in this lesson. You a man of war. Because the Lord is looking at it from the global perspective. I want the man that builds my house to be one that's recognized by peace, by prosperity, by tranquility, and these sorts of things. And that would be Solomon. Okay. Now, what the Lord also is wanting him to do, you just trying to build me a house. I'm trying to set your name up for legacy purposes, where you will be remembered forever and ever and ever. We talk about David today. Okay. So the Lord's legacy that he's trying to establish on him is the reason why we talk about David today. It's bigger than you just building the house. You just building a temple. You just fixing a door. You just fixing the plumbing. You just painting some walls. You just hanging some drywall, and you just fixing a roof. Yeah, that's a one-time thing. I'm trying to establish your legacy forever. I got bigger plans. So when you're trying to do something for the Lord, you got big ambitions, you want to do things, the first thing you ought to do, talk to the Lord about it in prayer. And then meditate. And that's when you let the Lord talk to you and let him know, let you in on what his plans for you are. And then y'all can be on the same page. Okay. Now I'm gonna say this, and we're gonna close. But I never begrudge anyone for wanting to do for the Lord when the Lord done bless them. Okay. Now, this requires some faith by David. Now, this ain't mine. This is from Dr. Mary McConnell. It's a lady that teaches for the Sunday School Publishing Board. She had this thing to say, and I thought it was fitting. It takes just as much faith to say to agree and accept the no when you gotta want to do something, than to do something as much as for you to say yes when the Lord asks you to do something. It requires faith on both hands because you want to do this in your own being, but then sometimes the Lord asks you to do some things. And so you need faith to do both. You need faith to refrain from doing what he don't want you to do, and you need faith to do what he's asking you to do. You need faith in both of those instances. And that, like I said, that's not mine. That's Dr. Mary McConnell, Sunday School Publishing Board. That's her. That was one of her things, and I thought it was something worthwhile to say. So, in my closing, whatever you're trying to do, it may be small. If it's buying a house, if it's buying a car, selecting a mate, selecting a job, talk to the Lord about it. See what his plans are. He might want you to have a better car, a better house, a better mate. She might need to have something more to her than how that skirt fits on her, to pick a husband. She might have better plans for you and how that suit hangs on him and how his jawline looks. He might have better plans. So when you looking for the Lord, looking for doing something for the Lord, talk to the Lord about it. See what his take on it. See what his plans are and see how your plans fit into his plans. Instead of trying to fit your plans, make his plans adjust to your plans. And the old adage is, if you ever want to make the Lord laugh, tell him what your plans are. Because he was like, no, I got bigger and better plans. Seek the Lord in all you do, and I guarantee you, all your stuff, as the psalm said, trust the Lord with all thy heart and lean not to your own understanding. All thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct their paths. And that's all we got today from our Sunday school lesson and God's promise. And all this leads up into the King of Kings, which is Jesus. He put him in the lineage leading all the way up to Jesus. All he was trying to do was just build a house. Lord got bigger plans for you. Talk to him. Let him let you know what his plans for you are. That's all we got. We hope you've learned something from our Sunday school study today. Let us stand and dismiss. Repeat after me. Let the words of my mouth, meditation of my heart, be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Consider yourself.